I was 24 when Boston taught me how to freeze. January scraped its nails down the Charles, and the wind off the water made the bridges sing. Inside the ivy walls, the med school radiated a different kind of cold. Sterile, fluorescent, relentlessly awake. My name is Marceline Core, first-generation college kid. Scholarship. A habit of whispering apologies to the centrifugal machine when it rattled too loud, as if gentleness could coax it into accuracy. Room B17 was my kingdom. It smelled like ethanol, coffee, and the quiet desperation of postdocs. On the far bench stood Evan Pike, my assigned lab partner. Evan smiled the way salesmen smile, bright, wide, and never free. "Morning, Marcy," he said, already gloved. "You sleep?" "Like a cadaver," I answered. I didn't tell him I stayed to triple-check our cell counts until the janitor flicked the lights twice. We were mapping a marker, an oncogene variant with promise for early detection in pediatric cases. Months of assays, tiny victories, data that felt like a heartbeat you could hold. Dean Halverson had stopped by a week earlier. He glanced at the graphs and said, "If this holds, it could change residency ranking, Evan. And you too, Ms. Core." His eyes lingered on Evan. The message was clear. Beautiful boys in medicine glide. I told myself not to care. I told myself to keep my hands steady. That morning, the plate reader hummed, obedient and unimpressed. I logged the values and felt the familiar thrill. Our signal was consistent. I reached for the backup drive. It wasn't where I left it. "Evan, did you move the blue drive?" He didn't look up. "Probably in the drawer." The drawer was empty. A small cold domino tipped inside me. "Relax," he said, finally turning. "We're fine." Fine is a word that bruises when it doesn't fit. At noon, the hospital cafeteria drowned in trays and exhausted laughter. I ate alone, tapping the laptop with a fork handle while my data software spun. My advisor, Dr. Lena Chudhuri, slid into the seat across from me, scarf bright against the gray day. "You look like you're negotiating with God," she said. "I think someone moved my backups." "Back up your backups," she replied, half joking, fully serious. "And watch your permissions, Marceline. You're brilliant. Don't let nice make you sloppy." Her words warmed me and then slipped away like steam. By evening, the lab went quiet. Only the incubator clicks and the wet tick of the eye wash station remained. I reran the assay, documented every step, and saved new copies to a fresh drive. I labeled it with blue tape, MK, primary, Jan 13. When I stood to stretch, I noticed Evan's bench was immaculate. Too immaculate. His notebook, usually a sloppy topography of margins and arrows, was missing. I told myself he took it home. I told myself people are allowed to be organized. I told myself a lot of things. The betrayal began as a whisper. 2 days later, my email pinged during morning rounds. Subject: "Congratulations on your upcoming grand rounds." I frowned. I hadn't submitted anything. The body of the email said, "We look forward to Evan Pike's presentation on early detection biomarkers in pediatric oncology. As a collaborator, you are encouraged to attend." Collaborator. My pulse skipped, then sprinted. I clicked the attached abstract. The figures were mine, not kind of mine, exactly mine. My plate layout. My revised axis titles with my neurotic hyphens. The control photo with the little bubble of media in the corner I'd meant to reshoot. Evan's name sat alone at the top. Mine, absent, like I had never existed. I stood so fast the chair scraped against tile. "Evan," my voice cracked. "Can we talk?" He looked up from pipetting with practiced confusion. "What's wrong, Marcy?" "This?" I shoved the printout toward him, hands trembling. "My figures, you submitted my work." "Our work," he corrected, voice calm as a sedative. "I compiled it for residency applications. I thought I mentioned." "You didn't." My mouth was dry. "And you didn't include me." The pause before his answer was an ocean. "I'm the one applying for PEDS oncology at MassGen," he said gently, like he was explaining gravity. "A single author looks cleaner. You'll have your turn." The air went thin. "Cleaner," I repeated, tasting metal. "Don't be dramatic. I'll thank you in the talk." I laughed, a sound with no humor. "You stole my work." He set the pipette down with surgical precision. "I optimized the protocol you designed. That makes it ours, legally. Don't make this ugly, Marcy. It won't help you." Ugly. The word curled its lip at me. I felt something in me tilt. Not break. Tilt. the way a scalpel turns just before it opens a precise line. That afternoon, I went to Dr. Chutery. She listened, eyes steady. Do you have timestamps, raw file histories, original lab video? I have some, I said, already sorting my mental drawers. But my backups? Then you build new ones, she said. Document everything from the second forward. Carbon copy me on your emails, and stop telling him when you breathe. I nodded, swallowing gratitude and shame. In the days leading to grand rounds, Evan became a parade float of entitlement. Posters went up. His smile, captured in high resolution, hovered over the cafeteria like a weather system. People clapped him on the back. Killer data, man. You're a lock for Mass Gen. I learned how to be fog, present but not seen. At night, I began my quiet surgery. I pulled server logs. I recovered autosaves. I photographed gel after gel beside the front page of the Boston Globe to stamp the date. I wrote to the reagent supplier for batch shipment records and CC'd my advisor. I recorded my screen as I opened raw data files, metadata visible, my initials embedded in file properties like a signature under skin. I didn't sleep. When I did, I dreamed of incubators whispering my name and waking to my heart beating in my throat. On the eve of the talk, Evan cornered me by the elevators. You'll be there, right? His smile tightened. Support? I'll be there, I said. Front row. Good, he said, because Lena said the board might come. Big day. When the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the steel. My face looked familiar and foreign. The softness had evacuated. What remained was a clean line. That night, snow began to fall. Fine. Merciless. The city softened under white. Sirens smudged to distant ghosts. I sat alone in B-17, lights low, the centrifuge's red eye blinking like a heartbeat. On the bench lay something I hadn't noticed before, a small silver USB drive near Evan's stool. No label, just the faint scratch of a brand logo. I stared at it, picked it up. It was warm, as if it remembered a pocket. My hands shook. I slid it into the back of my laptop and opened the first folder. Evan Res Apps 2003. Inside, PDFs, headshots, a letter addressed to Dear Selection Committee, and a folder named Final Figs. I clicked. Every image bloomed on the screen. My work, cropped differently, contrast boosted. My initials trimmed from the edges like dead tissue. There were also files I'd never seen. Replicates that should have been there, suddenly cleaned. The error bars were too perfect. The noise was gone. He hadn't just stolen. He had manipulated. A hot, dizzying calm moved through me. Underneath the adrenaline, a slower feeling emerged. Something like grief, something like clarity. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Voices. Evan's laugh close. I yanked the drive free and killed the screen. The door handle turned. He stepped in, shook snow from his hair, and froze when he saw me. Burning the midnight serum, huh? Something like that, I said, voice even. He smiled. See you tomorrow, partner. The words scraped. He left. The hallway swallowed his echo. I looked at the clock. Grand Rounds was at 9 a.m. I had less than 12 hours to decide whether I was a collaborator or a scalpel. I reopened the laptop. I reinserted the drive. I began copying everything, fingers steady at last. A new email arrived from Hospital Review Board. Urgent. Potential data irregularities. Please report to conference room 4A at 8 a.m., Ms. Core. I stared at the screen, heartbeat drumming. Who reported it first? My cursor hovered over reply as the lab lights flickered, the building exhaling like a living thing. I took a breath that tasted like metal and winter. And then behind me, the door clicked shut, but I hadn't touched it. The click of the door locking behind me wasn't loud, but it was enough. I spun, heart hammering against ribs, staring at the closed lab door. No one stood there, no footsteps fading down the hallway, just silence. My hands tingled, gripping the silver USB like it was a weapon. Did Evan know I'd seen it? Did he come back? Did someone else lock the door? The fluorescent lights buzzed, indifferent. I forced a breath and slid the drive into my pocket. I told myself, if you panic now, you lose. At 7:45 a.m., I walked into conference room 4A. The review board sat around a long oak table, polished to a sterile shine. Their expressions were masks, neutral, unreadable. Beside them, Dr. Chutery's scarf was the only color. She gave me a brief nod. Across the room, Evan leaned casually against the wall, flipping through his presentation notes. When he caught my eye, he winked. I wanted to claw the smugness off his face. Ms. Core, one of the board members said, adjusting his glasses. We received an anonymous tip regarding irregularities in Mr. Pike's data. Since you're listed as collaborator, we'd like clarification. Anonymous tip. Not me, not yet. Evan smiled smoothly. I assure you everything is solid. Marcy can confirm, can't you? All eyes swung to me. The silence thickened, waiting. My throat tightened. This was the moment. Do I protect my career, or do I cut? Inside my head, a monologue screamed. If you stay quiet, he wins. If you speak, you burn bridges that were never yours to begin with. I straightened my back. I've noticed discrepancies, I said. Voice trembling but clear. I'd like to present evidence before the grand rounds. Evan's eyes narrowed, just a fraction. The smile stayed, but the edges cracked. Very well, the board member said. Provide what you have after the session. We'll be watching closely. Grand rounds at 9 a.m. was theater. Hundreds of white coats, med students crammed shoulder to shoulder, the smell of burnt coffee clinging to winter air. Evan stood on stage, polished, rehearsed, a golden boy under the spotlight. Slides bloomed on the projector, my slides. The room leaned forward, hungry for breakthrough. I sat in the front row, hands tight around the USB in my pocket. Every time a figure appeared, I whispered in my head, mine, mine, mine. Halfway through, Evan paused for effect, gesturing at the perfect survival curves. The audience murmured in awe. That was my moment. The error bars too clean, the missing replicates, the silence of erased noise. I raised my hand. Excuse me, could you expand on the sample size for that graph? He faltered, just a flicker. 17 replicates. Liar, I knew there were only 9. The board members shifted. The dean scribbled something in his notes. The room felt suddenly fragile, like glass waiting for a crack. After the presentation, applause thundered anyway. Medicine loves a show, but whispers already circled. A student leaned to her friend. Didn't she? Another murmured. Something felt off. Outside the auditorium, Evan cornered me, jaw tight. What the hell was that? I met his eyes. My fear was gone, replaced with something sharper. The beginning, I said. That night, I began compiling the dossier. Screenshots, timestamps, batch shipment logs, every piece of metadata I could scrape. I recorded a video walkthrough of the USB contents, narrating like a forensic investigator. And then, I hesitated. Should I go straight to the review board? Or should I hold it, wait for the moment when it would hurt the most? My hands hovered over the mouse. Revenge isn't just about truth, it's about timing. And timing, I realized, could be surgical. At 2 a.m., I stared at my reflection in the black lab window. You used to be timid, I whispered. Now, you're a scalpel. The thought chilled me, but also it steadied me. The next morning, Evan greeted me with faux cheer. No hard feelings, right? You'll get credit in the long run. Residency directors only want clarity. I smiled back, lips tight. Sure, clarity. Inside, I was already planning the cut that would end him. Cliffhanger. 2 days later, an unexpected obstacle arrived, an email from the dean's office. Subject: Investigation Confidentiality Agreement. Immediate signature required. If I signed, I'd be gagged from sharing evidence publicly. If I refused, I'd risk expulsion. I stared at the screen, realizing Evan wasn't just fighting me in the lab anymore. He had the administration in his pocket. What was I willing to risk? The confidentiality agreement arrived with a polite subject line and a freezing attachment. Investigation Confidentiality Agreement. Please review and sign. 2 clicks and a PDF full of legalese that would silence me like a stitch. The dean's signature glowed at the bottom as if embossed with permission. Sign and the hospital would handle it. Refuse and they would consider disciplinary measures. I stared at it until the fonts blurred. Dr. Tutory sat with me in a corridor that smelled faintly of antiseptic and old coffee. They want control, she said. That's how institutions protect themselves. Her voice was steady but not cruel. You can hand them the files and trust due process. Or you can keep copies and play your hand differently. Play my hand, the phrase sounded foreign and heavy. If I sign, I can't speak. If I don't, they could kick me out. And he could walk into Mass General wearing a smile while you watch your career evaporate. She folded her hands like a surgeon considering sutures. I thought of my parents' sacrifices. I thought of every night I'd spent calibrating pipettes, until my fingers knew the rhythm of centrifuge hum. I thought of the way Evan had smiled at the dean, the way privilege worn like jewelry made rules bend. We made a plan that was small and legal, and to the world, utterly bureaucratic. Step 1. Make irrefutable copies and distribute them under layers of custody I could prove. Step 2. Create witnesses who weren't emotionally invested in me, people whose names would carry weight in a room full of white coats. Step 3. Let the institution play its part while I pulled threads behind the curtain. I started calling favors like sutures, tight, precise. Theo from IT owed me for bringing pastries to his late-night server hunts. He sat cross-legged on the lab floor with a laptop, eyes bright, headphones dangling like confessionals. File access logs, I said. Times, IPs, author metadata. Show me who touched what. He smiled a private smile. If someone scrubbed things, there's always a trace. People who know how to hide leave signatures too. He pulled logs and server snapshots, and we watched a crime scene unfold across lines of code. Entries showed a user connecting remotely one night. The IP trace led to a building on Beacon Hill, right near the dean's townhouse. Coincidence, maybe, or a clue. Samira, my classmate and the kind of blunt, no-nonsense woman who made people uncomfortable in the best way, became my face in faculty meetings. She had a voice like a gavel. If evidence exists, she said in a hushed stairwell meeting, you don't let it sit in one place. You put it where people can't ignore it. So we did. Copies went to Theo, to Dr. Choudhury, to a trusted family friend who taught law at Northeastern, and to an encrypted mailbox with a time release that would publish to a public server if anything happened to me. I learned a new language, checksum, hash, metadata, words that sounded like spells until they became armor. But revenge is not a sterile procedure. It spills, it smells, it has a pulse. Evan noticed the change. He started speaking in small, poisonous ways, the sort of comments that sound casual until they're lodged in your throat. You seem tense lately, Marcy. Are you sleeping? Stress affects accuracy. He would pat my shoulder in the hallway like a patronizing priest. People looked at me differently too, some sympathetic, some cautious. A rumor slipped like saline into veins. Marcy got emotional at the board. Another, she's difficult under pressure. It was quiet. It was effective. One Friday night, as snow remelted into gray slush, I found an anonymous envelope slipped under my dorm door. Inside, a single photo of me in the lab, taken through a slit in the curtains. The timestamp read 2:14 a.m. My stomach dropped. Someone had been watching me. I wanted to scream. Instead, I wrapped my hands around the paper until the creases dug white lines. That hunger, vindictive, protective, curdled into something colder, fear. The line between being a surgeon of truth and a patient under siege narrowed. I began sleeping with one eye open. Then we hit a snag sharp enough to make my breath hitch. Theo called me late. Someone's been in your office, he whispered. Not remotely, physically. Your laptop was moved. The local camera, power went out for exactly 94 seconds. Someone knew what they were doing. His voice had the hollow sound of someone who'd seen the internals of too many systems. I ran to B17 and found the lab as if someone had rearranged a stage set. My fresh notes, handwritten, were missing. My gel photos that I'd taken next to a clipped copy of the Boston Globe had been taken too. Not everything. Theo had grabbed encrypted copies off the server in time, but enough to make the heart slow. Evan met me by the centrifuge, expression blank. You look tired, he said. Maybe you should take a leave. No one would blame you. It felt like a punch with a velvet glove. I sat at the sink and put my face in my hands. A part of me wanted to crumble, to let the institution swallow me whole, because it was easier than the ordeal of clawing back a reputation. Another part, smaller but hotter, flickered alive. You didn't come this far to be gaslit into silence. The next morning, the review board issued a new demand: interim suspension while they audited all related data. They painted it as safeguarding research integrity. In practice, it felt like an executioner adjusting straps. I had to move faster. We executed the second phase of the plan. At grand rounds 2 nights later, an emergency session the dean called to maintain confidence, I sat in the back row with Samira and Theo. Evan took the stage first, composed like a general. He spoke with practiced cadence, his slides scrubbed and shiny. Then, like sliding a scalpel under scar tissue, Samira stood. She spoke not as my friend but as an observer. She spoke about research practice, about replication, about how perfect data can be a red flag. She asked the board if they'd seen the raw metadata for the files Evan had submitted. Heads turned, the dean's jaw tightened. Before anyone could respond, Theo, who had a way of appearing where he needed to, tapped his phone and said, "Board, if I may, I have verified access logs that indicate remote connections to the research server during off hours. I've shared a copy to the board inbox." A murmur rose. I felt the room tilt, like a tide finding its pull. Evan's face became a mask. He smiled, but it was paper thin. Then the dean's assistant stood, face pale, phone in hand. "We just received an anonymous packet," she said. "It contains a set of original files with timestamps and supplier logs, forwarded from an external attorney." Silence, the kind that compresses a room and makes people listen. Someone in the back coughed nervously. The dean's expression folded into something unreadable. For a moment, I allowed myself something that bordered on elation. The architecture of secrecy we'd faced was cracking, but the victory tasted like soldered metal. Because when the assistant tapped her tablet to open the packet, a single line of text scrolled across the screen before the PDF rendered. "Access denied, authority override." The room watched the PDF fail to open. The dean's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then at Evan, then back at the board. "Technical issues," he said, voice careful. "It is looking into it." Theo swore softly. Samira's jaw clenched. My stomach sank like a dropped scalpel. Some hand, some force, had the power to lock the evidence out of the room. A slow, cold realization sank in. Whoever had the reach to block the packet could also follow every file path I had tried to secure. And in the hallway, footsteps approached. Deliberate, measured, the sound of someone who knew the building and how to bend its lights. Cliffhanger, I opened my mouth to speak, to demand the board request the raw server dump on record. But before a word formed, my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. "Walk away, Marceline. This is bigger than you. Sign the agreement, for your sake." I read it twice. My hands trembled. The room smelled like wet paper, like pressure. I realized I was not just fighting Evan. I was fighting a network built to protect itself. The scalpel in my hand felt small. The text glared from my phone like a pulse. "Walk away, Marceline. This is bigger than you. Sign the agreement, for your sake." My fingers hovered above the screen. For a second, I wanted to smash the phone against the table, to watch plastic and glass splinter into pieces I could control. But instead, I slipped it back into my pocket and kept my face unreadable. Because the board was still watching, Evan was still smiling, and I, timid little Marceline, was supposed to fold. Not this time. That night, snow thickened outside the dorm windows, muffling the city. Inside my chest, though, noise built. I paced, clutching my notes, my heart beat loud enough to drown out the radiator. Bigger than me. The words gnawed at me. It wasn't just Evan. Someone higher was keeping the lid on, pulling strings. That made the board a stage, and me, a disposable understudy. Samira stopped me before I could spiral further. She sat cross-legged on my bed, braiding and unbraiding her hair. "They're bluffing. People in power always bluff first. Fear is their opening move." "What if it's not a bluff?" I whispered. "What if they actually can bury me?" She held my gaze. "Then you make sure they have to bury the truth with you. You want to scare them back? Show them you've already sown the seeds." Her words landed like stitches tightening. If I was already a threat, then silence wasn't safety. It was suffocation. The next day, I got my hands on a student ID badge, borrowed from a sympathetic classmate in IT. Late at night, I slipped into the archives basement, where old theses and research reports were stored on servers no one bothered to monitor. The hum of machines echoed like distant bees. I logged in, uploaded my evidence packets under an innocuous folder labeled Histology Backup 1996, and set a hidden script. If the files were touched, a copy would auto-forward to 3 outside accounts. One of those accounts belonged to a Boston Globe reporter whose card I'd taken months ago at a science expo. She had written once about medical data gone missing. She understood silence and what it hides. As I walked out of the basement, the air felt lighter until a shadow shifted near the stairwell. "Working late, Marcy?" Evan's voice, too casual. My stomach dropped. He stepped into the light, blocking the stairs. His coat dripped melted snow, his smile sharp as glass. "Research never sleeps," I muttered, brushing past. His hand shot out, gripping my arm, not hard but firm enough. Be careful, he said softly. This isn't the kind of place that forgives mistakes. I yanked free, pulse roaring in my ears. By Friday, rumors spread faster than flu. Whispers in hallways, side eyes in the cafeteria. Marceline's losing it. Marceline's paranoid. The dean summoned me privately. His office smelled of leather and varnish. He gestured for me to sit, his voice low, almost kind. You're a bright young woman, Miss Core. I'd hate to see you ruin your career over misunderstandings. I forced myself to meet his gaze. Are you saying I should let someone falsify research and call it ambition? He sighed, folding his hands. I'm saying medicine has currents. Sometimes you swim with them, sometimes you drown. His warning was polite poison. When I left his office, I realized Evan wasn't just protected. He was being groomed. The system wanted him to succeed, and me to vanish. That night, my fear cracked into anger sharp enough to cut bone. I called Theo. We need something undeniable, something they can't scrub. Theo hesitated. That means crossing a line. Then we cross it? He arrived with an external drive, his laptop glowing in the dark lab. We could mirror the server, he whispered. A complete dump. It'll prove the tampering, but if they trace it, they will, I interrupted. So we hide it somewhere they can't reach. We set it up. The whir of fans filled the room as files streamed, line after line, secrets bleeding into a new container. Halfway through, the lights flickered. Then, blackout. The machines cut mid-transfer. The hum died. I froze. Power outage? Theo's face was pale in the glow of emergency lights. No. Someone killed the circuit to this floor. We stared at each other, realizing we weren't just stealing evidence. Someone was watching us. Cliffhanger. A beam of light pierced the lab, flashlights sweeping across benches. Heavy boots echoed in the hallway. Theo hissed, shoving the half-loaded drive into my hands. Run, Marcy, now! The flashlight moved closer, and as I pressed the drive to my chest, I wondered if this was how scalpel work ends. Not with precision, but with someone holding the light steady for your execution. The flashlight beam cut across the lab, slicing through shadows. My pulse hammered in my ears, loud enough to drown out the hum of the emergency lights. Theo shoved the half-loaded drive deeper into my hands. Go, he hissed. The boots outside grew louder, deliberate, heavy. Whoever it was knew the layout of this floor. I stuffed the drive into my coat pocket and slipped through the side door near the chemical storage. The hall smelled of bleach and dust, my footsteps muffled by the old linoleum. Behind me, the lab door creaked open, voices low, professional. Not security guards. These were men who spoke like they belonged here. Check the machines. He's in here somewhere. Theo. I froze. I wanted to run back, to drag him out, but his warning echoed in my skull. Run, Marcy. So I did. I sprinted down stairwells, breath sharp in the icy air. Each turn echoed with boots behind me, closer than I wanted to believe. The campus at night looked like a different city. Snow-coated courtyards glowed under orange lamps, and statues of dead donors loomed like watchmen. I cut across the quad, coat whipping behind me, the drive burning against my ribs. My lungs screamed, but adrenaline carried me. Then, headlights. A black sedan rolled slow, too slow, across the street. Its windows mirrored the snow. I ducked behind a bike rack, heart pounding. The sedan idled, then eased toward the side lot, watching, waiting. This wasn't random. I made it to the dorm, slammed the door shut behind me, and locked it twice. My hands shook as I shoved a chair under the handle. The room felt too small, too bright. I clutched the drive like a relic. They know I copied the server. And Theo, God, Theo! I pulled out my phone, dialing him, straight to voicemail. A pit opened in my stomach. The next morning, the board issued an official notice. All students involved in Research Project B17 are under suspension pending review. They had folded me into the accusation. Evan passed me in the hallway, immaculate as ever. He leaned close enough for only me to hear. You should have signed, he murmured. Now you're part of the problem. I wanted to hit him. Instead, I smiled, teeth clenched. You're right, I said softly. I should have signed, but I didn't. His smile wavered, just slightly. Samira and I met in a coffee shop off campus, the kind where steam fogged the windows and no one asked questions. They're circling you, she said. Whispers about academic dishonesty. If they smear you, you'll be radioactive. Then I need to go nuclear first, I whispered. She raised her eyebrows. Meaning? meaning if they want to ruin me, I'll take the roof down with me. That night, I plugged the drive into my laptop. Half the files were intact, enough to prove tampering, but scattered. I built a new packet. This time, not just to the Globe Reporter, I set it to Cascade. Faculty alumni lists, medical watchdog forums, even early internet message boards hungry for scandal. If one door shut, 10 others would open. But as I hit save, a window popped up across my screen. Unauthorized access detected. Your files are under review. My cursor froze. Then, like someone breathing in my ear, a new line appeared. Stop, Marceline. Last warning. I yanked the Ethernet cable out of my laptop, heart racing. But the damage was done. Whoever was inside my system knew I was ready to go public. The next day, the dean called an emergency assembly. Faculty, students, and residents filled the auditorium. The tension was thick enough to choke. He cleared his throat. Recent allegations have cast a shadow on our institution. We will address them swiftly and internally. I expect cooperation. Then he gestured. Evan walked onto the stage. Applause, cameras flashing, his smile wide. And then the dean's words. We are proud to announce that Mr. Pike has been offered early placement at Mass General. The room erupted. I sat in the back row, my nails biting my palms until blood welled. Evan's eyes swept the crowd and landed on me. That smile widened, like victory incarnate. But inside my coat pocket, the drive hummed with quiet power. I wasn't done. Not even close. The photo of Theo burned into me, his face swollen, one eye darkened like spoiled fruit. His hands tied to a chair with plastic straps, a dim light casting his outline. The note was clipped to the corner, the handwriting sharp and deliberate. Final chance, tomorrow 9 a.m. review board. Say nothing. My hands shook, but not from fear, from rage. I called his phone again, voicemail. His laugh on the greeting sounded like a ghost. Samira came running when I texted her. She took one look at the photo and swore under her breath. This isn't academic politics anymore. This is muscle. They're using him to choke me. My voice was flat. Samira grabbed my shoulders. So what do you do? I stared at the envelope. If I stay silent, Evan wins. If I speak, Theo could die. The air between us thickened, heavy with no good answers. I hardly slept. By dawn, I sat at my desk, the drive glowing faint blue in the dark. I opened my packet, hovering over the send all button. Just one click, and the world would see everything. The tampered graphs, the falsified replicates, the logs pointing back to Beacon Hill. But what if the photo was real time? What if hitting send signed Theo's death warrant? I slammed the laptop shut. My heart felt like a scalpel in my chest, cutting both ways. At 9 a.m., the review board chamber felt more like a trial than a meeting. The oak table stretched long, members seated like judges. The dean at the head, his hands folded. Evan sat to the side, immaculate in a navy suit, his confidence radiating like heat. Ms. Core, the dean began, we understand you've gathered materials regarding the B-17 project. Before we proceed, do you have anything to declare? My palms sweated. I could feel Samira's eyes boring into me from the back row, willing me to speak. Theo's face, bound, bruised, flashed in my head. I opened my mouth. And then the door slammed open. Theo, bruised, limping, his shirt torn. He stumbled into the room, 2 campus security guards holding him upright. His voice rasped but clear. Don't you dare stay quiet, Marcy. Gasps rippled across the board. I surged to my feet. Theo! The dean's face froze, caught between rage and calculation. Evan's smile evaporated, jaw tightening. Theo pulled free of the guards and tossed something onto the table, the same manila envelope. Ask him where that came from, he spat, pointing at Evan. Ask him why his name's on the corner of the photo print. The room erupted. Board members muttered, some standing. The dean snapped for order, his voice cracking. Evan stammered, that's ridiculous. But Samira was already on her feet, waving her phone. I have the metadata. That envelope was printed from the hospital admin's machine last night. The moment fractured like glass. The board's chair pounded the table. Enough. Until this is resolved, Mr. Pike's residency placement is frozen. Evan's face drained. He turned toward me, eyes full of venom. You think this saves you? You've just set yourself on fire. Maybe, but at least I wasn't alone anymore. The words on my phone twisted like a scalpel in my gut. The board isn't your enemy. Look higher. I stared until the screen dimmed. Higher? Higher than the dean? Higher than the review board? It wasn't paranoia anymore. Someone had been tugging strings all along. That night, Samira, Theo, and I crammed into my dorm room, curtains drawn tight. Theo sat gingerly, wincing whenever his ribs protested. His face was bruised, but his eyes were sharp. They didn't rough me up for fun, he said. They wanted me scared enough to scare you, but there's something worse. They slipped while talking. I leaned forward. Slipped how? Theo's voice dropped. They said the foundation has too much invested to let this go public. Samira frowned. Foundation? Which one? Theo shook his head. Didn't catch the name, but they weren't afraid of Evan. They were afraid of losing funding. The room went still. Funding, endowments. The lifeblood of an Ivy League med school. Evan wasn't the puppeteer. He was the puppet in a very expensive show. I paced. If the foundation's money is tied to the data, then Evan's fake results aren't just about his residency. They're leverage for millions in grants. Samira nodded grimly. And if you expose him, you expose their golden pipeline. That's why they're willing to crush me, I whispered. Theo winced as he leaned back. So the question is, do you want revenge on Evan? Or do you want to slice the artery that feeds all of them? His words landed heavy. My anger at Evan had been personal, sharp as glass. But now I saw the scaffolding behind him. The system wasn't protecting him, it was protecting itself. The next morning, campus buzzed with half-truths. Posters about academic integrity suddenly appeared. Anonymous flyers whispered about rogue students undermining research. I knew they were aimed at me. Evan floated through the halls, untouchable, though the cracks showed. He avoided eye contact, his smile a little too forced. When our paths crossed, he leaned close. They won't let you win, Marcy. Even if you destroy me, the system eats girls like you alive. I met his gaze. Then maybe it's time someone gave it indigestion. Samira arranged a meeting off campus with someone she trusted. Dr. Howard, a retired faculty member who'd burned bridges years ago for calling out financial corruption. We found him in a diner that smelled of bacon grease and burnt coffee. His hands shook slightly as he stirred sugar into tea. You're walking into a graveyard, he said, after listening to our story. Do you know how many careers disappear when money and research collide? You think the dean is powerful. He's a clerk. The real power sits in mahogany offices miles away. Then how do we reach them, I asked. He studied me with tired eyes. You don't, not alone. But if you want to wound them, you go to the press. You go loud. You make it impossible to bury. Theo slid the half-complete drive across the table. We've got proof. Not perfect, but enough to raise suspicion. Howard nodded. Suspicion is a fuse. Light it and stand back. That night, I sat in the lab again, the walls humming with ghosts. I thought about my parents, about how they believed medicine was sacred, about how I had believed it too, until I saw how easy it was to sell integrity for a line in a ledger. I wasn't sure if what I felt was grief or fury, maybe both. The next morning, the review board called me again. Their patience was thinning. They wanted closure. I walked in with Samira at my side. Theo waited outside, still limping. The dean's expression was carved stone. Ms. Core, this is your final opportunity. Do you have evidence to submit or not? I placed the drive on the table, steady. I do, but I won't hand it to you, not yet. Gasps, murmurs. One board member frowned. What exactly are you implying? I met their eyes, one by one. That if you want to bury this, you'll have to bury it in daylight. Because I've already sent copies outside this room. The silence that followed felt like the moment before lightning hits. Evan shifted in his seat, his smile cracking like glass. The dean's jaw clenched. You don't know who you're provoking. I do, I said softly. And I'm not done yet. They went after my parents. The map. The red pin. The message under it. Stay silent or they pay the price. Felt like a hand inside my chest squeezing. For a second, the world narrowed to the small square of my phone screen and the picture of the house where my mother kept mason jars and my father fixed lawnmowers. I didn't tell Samira I almost vomited. I didn't tell Theo I wanted to throw myself at the dean's throat. I did the only thing that felt remotely sensible. I protected the people I loved. Howard moved faster than I expected. He called an old contact, a private investigator who used to work security for visiting dignitaries. Within hours, my parents' modest Ohio bungalow had a short-term security detail and a temporary relocation plan. My mother was incredulous when the PI called her with a vacuous alias and a flight ticket. They said I had won a small grant and had to go to Cleveland, she told me later, voice shaking and brave. I lied to them. I said it was a workshop. I said it was safe. I half believed it then. Meanwhile, I widened the net. Dr. Howard argued for a surgical public release. We couldn't just fling accusations into the wind. We had to make them impossible to sweep under carpet. The plan. A coordinated cascade. The evidence would hit 3 channels simultaneously. An investigative piece with the Globe reporter, an academic whistleblower post on a high-traffic medical watchdog forum, and a timed, encrypted dump to a torrent of smaller outlets and alumni lists. The purpose was redundancy. If one link died, 30 others would carry the truth. Samira handled logistics. She taught me to use burner accounts and ephemeral messaging, how to create plausible deniability around uploads. Theo and I pieced together the best composite from the mirrored server, checksums intact, metadata screaming manipulation, invoices from suppliers with corrected batch numbers, IP traces arcing back toward Beacon Hill. We knew the risk. We still did it. 2 nights before the release, Samira handed me an envelope in the back of a diner. Inside, a newspaper clipping from years before, an old photo of the dean clasping hands with a man I didn't recognize. Dark suit, darker smile. The caption read, Philanthropist Donor Fund's New Oncology Wing. Under that, a ledger excerpt hinted at a funneling of grant money tied to early-stage clinical marker patents. This isn't just money laundering, Samira said. It's a pipeline. They turn research into leverage, leverage into placement, placement into prestige, prestige into donations. Then they repeat. Her voice was tired but lit with that hard resolve people get when they see how a system really works. The night before the cascade, I barely slept. I rehearsed a statement until it sounded like a lie, then like the only truth I could stomach. I told myself the right thing to do was make noise loud enough to make them blink. Early morning, we moved. Theo and I uploaded the primary packet to the Globe's secure drop. Simultaneously, Samira fired off the whistleblower post. The encrypted dump rolled like a starting gun. My stomach collided with my spine. The phone in my pocket vibrated with multiple confirmations. Received, received, received. The Globe reporter called. Her voice was flat. We're on it. We'll run in the afternoon. Are you prepared to go on record? She meant live interview. She meant exposure. Yes, I said. I felt the word as if it were a bandage. We set a meeting outside campus, a public place with cameras and witnesses. The reporter wanted a face, a voice, a human center for the story. I practiced how much to say, how much to hold back. The truth I knew now had teeth. How many bites it would take was the gamble. Everything, meticulously timed, fell into place. An hour before the Globe piece went live, I sat in the reporter's car with Samira and Theo. Howard had phoned earlier with one last warning. They will negotiate. They will threaten. They always do. Do not back down. His voice trembled. I tried not to hear the terror thin behind his words. Then, at 10:12 a.m., the first article posted. The headline was restrained but damning. Questions raised over clinical data at prestigious medical school. Within minutes, social feeds blew up. Screenshots of corrupted graphs and supplier logs spread. Journalists pinged each other. Alumni forums erupted. The hospital's switchboard lit like a pinball machine. The dean surfaced in a statement, calculated, conciliatory. The foundation issued a cryptic memo about ongoing reviews. Evan sent a terse text. You'll regret this. I wanted to answer, try me. Instead, I watched the number of people reading rise as if the world were a weight scale, tipping under truth. And then the ransom came. A video link, anonymous, sent to my phone and every outlet we'd touched. The clip opened to shaky footage. My mother in the kitchen, hands bound. My father beside her, eyes wild with fear. Someone off camera hissed, "Tell them you'll stop." My mother's lips trembled. Her eyes found the camera and briefly, they found me. My throat closed. I could hear only my blood. The video's caption read, "You chose your war, now choose what you value." A timestamp suggested it was recent. The comments on the Globe thread turned ugly. Advocates called for calm. Trolls called for me to be silenced. Samira threw up her hands. They crossed a line. Theo's jaw clenched. We keep going. They can't win by terrorizing civilians. Howard's phone lit with calls. An attorney lined up, a crisis PR consultant on standby. The Globe reporter whispered, "We'll add the video context to the piece. It strengthens the motive, but it also puts your family at risk." Her words were clinical, her eyes were human. I looked at my phone, at the small rectangle showing my mother's face, at the bowl of mason jars in the background. My stomach fell, then steadied with ice. Right then, a new notification slid onto my screen. One line, no sender name. "We can stop this. Come alone to the old amphitheater at dusk. Bring the server key. No cops." It felt like a trap. It felt like a lifeline. My hands were shaking, but not with fear, with choice. I closed my eyes. If I went, it might buy them time. If I stayed, they might hurt someone I loved. If I handed over the key, the evidence would die, and the system would live. The sun fell low, bleeding orange over Boston's brick. I told Samira and Theo I needed a minute alone. I walked toward the small park behind the school where students sometimes practice theater, where lights from windows made grids on the snow. My phone vibrated one more time, a single message. "You come alone, or the next clip is the funeral." The words sat like a weight at the base of my skull. I looked up at the old stone amphitheater in the distance, an empty place, echoing. The city around me kept moving, indifferent. Snow settled on the benches like quiet. I took a breath that tasted like winter and iron. And I walked. Cliffhanger. As I neared the amphitheater, a figure stepped from the shadows, smaller than I expected, familiar, and before I could speak, that person spoke my name and said quietly, "You were supposed to be dead by now." The figure stepped into the halo of the amphitheater lights, and I saw her face, familiar in a way that struck like thunder. Dr. Lena Chowdhury. She smiled, but it wasn't the warm, steady smile I'd learned to trust. It was a smile that had learned to keep secrets. "You were supposed to be dead by now," she said softly, as if she were reciting bad news to a patient. For a second, the sentence didn't make sense. Then the world slid into a new angle of light. "You... what?" My voice came out thin. My hands hugged the server key like a child's talisman. She stepped closer. "They wanted you gone, Marceline. Not suspended. Gone." I intercepted the order. Her eyes flicked to the drive peeking from my pocket. "You got lucky in a very precise way." My knees wanted to give. "Lena, why?" "You told me to document everything, to CC you. You sat with the board. You put your scarf around my shoulders. You..." She tipped her head. "I put my scarf on so cameras would see it. So I'd look compromised enough to not raise suspicion. There are things I can do inside the house that you cannot." Her voice was calm, like a surgeon setting a bone. "I owe people favors, bad favors. I called them in. I made sure someone watched your parents. Then I made sure someone else thought they'd get to you. The goal was to flush the real players out." My chest heated with a dozen emotions: relief, fury, gratitude, betrayal. "You put my family at risk as bait? I made them move for 10 hours, she said. Not stay, not harmed. The picture you got? Real enough to scare, effective enough to force a call. But Theo?" Her jaw tightened. "Theo paid a real price. I'm sorry, I misjudged their reach." Theo's name landed like a brick. "You let Theo get hurt for a theater?" My voice cracked. Lena closed her mouth like a patient accepting pain. "I didn't let him. I failed to see the contingency. I can't take that back. I can only fix what comes next." Behind her, the night felt like it had teeth. Somewhere a siren wailed and then fell silent. Snow drifted into the amphitheater like confetti from a funeral. "How do I know any of this isn't another play?" I asked. "How do I know you didn't make the photo? How do I know you aren't part of the foundation?" She laughed once, short, humorless. "Because I have my own enemies, Marcy. Because I have scars you don't know about. Because I could have walked away when I saw Evan hand you the slides. I didn't. I sat in the dean's office and told him I'd retire if he pushed you out. He laughed and offered me a chair on the review committee. That's leverage." Her eyes pierced me. "And because I know where the foundation keeps its ledger backups, offline, physical, paperwork carpets in a vault under a donor's office off Beacon Hill. You want to cut the artery, that's where you hit." My brain scrambled. The plan we'd made with Howard and Theo had been digital: mirrors, torrents, cascade releases. The idea of paper ledgers, a physical vault, felt prehistoric and impossibly vulnerable. It also felt like what Harvard novels call a smoking gun. Lena continued quieter. I can get you in. I can get you out. I can get you the paper copies, and we can authenticate them, seal stamps, signed receipts, who wrote what on which day. But there are conditions. I should have looked away when she said that. Looking away might have been safer, but I was already leaning in. What conditions? I asked. She told me in a low tone that made the snow hush. No press release until we had the paper copies in hand. No moves that would burn the legal avenues Howard had opened. And, this one bit deep, she wanted me to turn over the master key, the full mirrored dump, to her custody for 60 hours so her people could cross-check paper to pixel and prepare an unassailable packet. My mouth went dry. Why 60 hours? And why you? Why not Howard or the Globe? She watched me like she was measuring bone density. Because I have clearances, they don't. Because the dean trusts me enough to let me wander where others can't. Because if this goes wrong and your parents pay the price, I will carry that with me for the rest of my life. But if it goes right, if we hold paper and pixel together in the same room in front of cameras, then the foundation doesn't have a path to bury it. It was either madness or a map. It was also a demand that felt like a surgical amputation. Hand over the thing that had been my lifeline. Hand it to the woman who'd just admitted she'd gambled with my family. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from an unknown number. We see you, Marceline. Don't be a fool. The sender had blocked me. A chill ran up my spine. Lena read the change in me. You think I want to take credit, she said, with almost a pitying patience. I want the truth. I want the record. I want the ledger burned in public. After that, people like me can return to quieter sins. Before that, we do surgery. She held out her hand, not for the drive, for a promise. You have until dawn to decide, she said. The dean will convene a restraining vote if you do nothing. If you hand the key to me, I'll move tonight. If you refuse, you go public tonight with what you have and hope the servers and the Globe hold. But I won't be at the press table unless the paper is in front of me. The amphitheater felt cold as a morgue. My breath clouded like a ghost. My hands clenched the drive until my knuckles whitened. Then footsteps, soft, deliberate, from the path behind the amphitheater. A shadow detached itself from the trees and moved toward us. Evan. He walked with a slouch that made him look smaller, but his eyes were the same hard coin. He stopped a few paces away, palms open to show he had nothing. Lena, he said, voice slick. Fancy seeing you here. Lena's smile thinned. Evan. She didn't move. She didn't flinch. You think you can play both sides? Evan asked me, not her. Hand the drive over. Save everyone the drama. He looked calmer than I felt. Too calm. I could hand the drive to Lena and hope. Hope that she moved as promised, that she could get the paper, that Theo would live and my parents would be safe. Or I could refuse and trigger the Globe's cascade, risk everything, and maybe lose everything. I felt the weight of 60 hours like a guillotine above my neck. Then Evan's phone chimed. He glanced at it and smiled in a way that made my skin ice. Also, he said, voice cutting the air, the board just voted to refer this matter to legal counsel. Everything you have will be sealed. No leaks, no external release. You hand it over to Dr. Chutery now, or you hand it over to the board. I looked from Evan to Lena. One hand wanted to throw the drive at Evan's chest. The other wanted to give it to Lena and run. Lena stepped forward and lowered her voice so only I could hear. If you give it to them, they'll have a legal paper trail to bury it. If you give it to me, we go to the vault tonight. Your call. The snow whispered around us. The amphitheater waited, an audience of stone. Cliffhanger? I swallowed, and for perhaps the first time since all this began, I felt utterly alone. Then I did the thing neither of them expected. I pressed the server key into Evan's hand. The cold drive left my hand and landed in Evan's. His fingers curled around it like he'd just caught a live pulse. Lena's eyes went wide. Not fear, not anger, but calculation. Marceline, she breathed, like she couldn't believe I'd chosen him. Evan smirked, the confidence sliding back onto his face like a tailored glove. Finally, he said, you learned. But inside my chest, my heart wasn't breaking. It was burning. Because I hadn't given him surrender. I'd given him a trap. I stepped back, my voice steady. Congratulations, Evan. You got what you wanted. He tilted his head, suspicious but savoring the moment. Took you long enough. Snow drifted between us, catching in his hair. He looked almost cinematic, a villain written for the part. Careful, Lena murmured. You don't know what you just pocketed. Evan barked a laugh. Don't patronize me, doctor. I've been ahead this whole time. I said nothing, because the drive he now held wasn't the full mirror. It was the decoy, an encrypted shell, loaded with corrupted files and one hidden payload, a timed program that would auto-release the real data to every node of our cascade within 12 hours. Even if he destroyed it, the truth was already breathing. Lena caught my eyes for half a heartbeat. The flicker of understanding passed between us like static. Evan tucked the drive into his coat. This is over, and you, he pointed at me, will be nothing but a cautionary tale. He turned to leave. That was when the amphitheater lights flickered, and Theo stumbled out of the shadows, one arm wrapped around his ribs, his breath ragged but his voice sharp. Not so fast. Evan froze, caught between arrogance and surprise. Theo's eyes blazed. You think pain will stop me? You think intimidation is enough? I'll testify. I'll stand in front of the board, the press, the dean. I don't care if I'm limping or bleeding. Evan sneered. You're finished, Theo. They'll smear you as easily as her. But Theo's grin was crooked steel. Then smear us both. The truth doesn't care what you call it. For the first time, Evan faltered. His eyes darted to me, then Lena, then back to Theo. The perfect golden boy veneer cracked. Just a fracture, but enough. Lena stepped forward, scarf trailing in the cold air. You're outnumbered, Evan. You may hold the drive, but you don't hold the future. He laughed again, too sharp. Future? You really don't get it. The foundation is the future, the hospital board, the grants, the endowments. They belong to people who will never see your faces. You think one packet of files changes that? My voice rose, steady but edged like a scalpel. Not one packet, hundreds, thousands, everywhere by tomorrow morning. Evan's smirk froze. What did you do? Theo chuckled hoarsely. She outplayed you, genius. The silence that followed was thick with snow and breath. Finally, Evan shook his head, muttering, You'll regret this. He turned, disappearing into the night with the decoy drive. His footsteps crunched until they faded into Boston's winter silence. Lena exhaled, long and low. He'll run to the dean. He'll think he's secured the win. By the time they realize it's hollow, the cascade will be unstoppable. I wrapped my coat tighter. Then we have 12 hours to prepare for the storm. Theo limped closer, his hand brushing mine. And we make sure the world hears it straight from you, Marcy. That night, back in my dorm, the three of us planned for daylight. Howard patched in over the phone, his voice grave but exhilarated. The Globe is ready to print a full exposé once the files hit. Alumni are already whispering revolt. If the foundation loses face now, they lose donors. Samira set up secure calls with watchdog groups. Theo drafted his testimony, his handwriting shaky but determined. Lena made calls I didn't understand, murmuring to names I'd never heard, her tone urgent, clipped. I sat at my desk, staring at my reflection in the laptop screen. I barely recognized the woman there. Not timid, not silent, hardened. A scalpel honed to cut. The text from my father stared back at me like a knife. They found us. Don't trust anyone, not even the doctor. The doctor, Lena. I wanted to believe it was a fake, that someone had cloned his number, seeded fear into my veins. But my father was a simple man. He didn't use words like doctor casually. If he sent that message, he meant it. I felt the floor tilt. The one ally who had pulled me out of the shadows, who claimed to save my family, might have been carving me open the whole time. Theo limped into the dorm, carrying 2 cups of stale coffee. Long night? He asked, trying to sound casual. I shoved the phone into his hands. He read, his jaw tightening. Could be a fake, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Or it could be real. Samira paced, hands knotting in her hair. If Lena's dirty, we're already compromised. She knows too much. Where the cascade goes, who's helping, what we have left. The three of us sat in silence, the air thick enough to choke. I whispered, if she's double playing us, then handing her the real files is suicide. But if she's telling the truth, she might be the only way to crack the vault. Theo dropped into the chair with a groan. So either way, she holds the scalpel. At 9 a.m., the Globe's first full article went live. Data fabrication allegations at Ivy League Medical School escalate. My face was there, blurred slightly, but recognizable. Student whistleblower. That was me. The reaction was nuclear. Forums ignited. Alumni donors issued statements of grave concern. The hospital board announced an emergency audit. Students on campus buzzed with whispers and stares, some afraid, some in awe. But by noon, the counteroffensive hit. An anonymous op-ed accused me of falsifying evidence for attention. My high school records were leaked online. Every grade, every minor mistake. Old classmates suddenly remembered I'd been unstable. They tried to bury me in noise. Samira slammed her laptop shut. "This is character assassination 101. Theo snorted. "Let them dig, it means they're scared." But I wasn't so sure. Fear has a way of spreading, like cancer. By late afternoon, a call came through Howard's line. He patched us in. Lena's voice filled the room, calm, steady. "Marceline," she said, "the dean is mobilizing. Tonight they'll move the ledgers from the vault. If you want them, it has to be now." I stared at the speakerphone, bile in my throat. Theo gestured, "Don't answer." Samira's eyes screamed trap. But if she was right, the ledgers were our kill shot. Paper proof that the foundation's money had bought false results, bought prestige, bought silence. If she was lying, then walking into her arms was suicide. At 7 p.m., snow fell heavy, muting Boston into a white silence. I stood in the dorm hallway, coat zipped, scarf pulled high, staring at the exit door. My phone buzzed again. This time, another message from my father. "We're safe, don't worry, do what you have to do." It was the opposite of the first. 2 messages, 2 truths, or 2 lies. My hands shook, my chest ached. I whispered to Theo and Samira, "Either way, I'm going to Beacon Hill tonight, with or without you." Theo gritted his teeth. "If you walk into fire, I'm not letting you burn alone." Samira grabbed her bag. "And someone's got to keep you both alive." At 9 p.m., we approached the donor's office. The building was tall, glass and steel overlaid on old brick. Lit like a cathedral to money, the snow muffled our footsteps. Lena was waiting in the alley. Her scarf, red as blood, was the only color in the dark. "You came," she said softly. Her eyes landed on me, searching. "I know you doubt me. You should. But the vault's real. We have 20 minutes before they move the ledgers. You'll have to decide if the truth is worth trusting me." I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to believe her. Theo whispered, "Marcy, this is it. If we step inside, there's no going back." Lena held out a small access card. "Take it. It'll get you past the first door. After that, you'll need me." I reached out, hesitated, then closed my hand around the card. Her fingers brushed mine. Too warm, too calm. The dean's voice echoed in the snow-muffled street. "Miss Core, hand it over, now." The men behind him spread in a semicircle, coats bulging in ways that told me they weren't carrying books. Their breath steamed in the icy air. Theo shifted beside me, jaw tight. Samira muttered under her breath, "This is a firing squad in blazers." Lena didn't move. Her scarf whipped in the wind, her face calm as a frozen lake. I swallowed, forcing my voice steady. "You don't have authority out here, Dean." His smile was thin. "Authority is whatever people believe. Right now, they believe me." I thought of my father's message. Don't trust anyone, not even the doctor. Lena stood inches from me, too close, too still. My chest ached. I had to gamble, again. I took the access card she'd given me and held it up. "If you want this, you'll have to follow me inside." Before the dean could respond, I bolted for the side entrance. Theo cursed, sprinting after me. Samira darted behind, her camera already in hand. Lena stayed close, her steps eerily smooth, as if she knew every stone. The dean's men gave chase. The access card beeped green. The heavy glass door slid open. We slipped into the belly of the donor's building, warm air smelling of paper and polish. Corridors stretched like arteries. Security cameras blinked red. The echo of boots thundered behind us. "Downstairs," Lena hissed. "The vault is sub-basement level 2. We flew down a staircase, the air cooler with each flight. My lungs burned. Theo's steps were uneven, but he didn't slow. Samira gripped my sleeve, whispering, "We're not getting out without something to show." At the bottom, a steel door loomed, keypad glowing green. Beside it, a biometric scanner blinked. Lena pressed her hand flat against the pad. The scanner chirped. The lock disengaged with a hiss. The vault opened. Rows of filing cabinets stretched into the dim light like pews in a cathedral. Boxes labeled with dates and project codes stacked to the ceiling. The air smelled of ink, dust, and secrets. "This is it," Lena whispered. The Foundation's real heart. Theo exhaled, eyes wide. God. We rushed to the nearest row. Samira snapped photos, her flash slicing through the dark. I yanked open a drawer. Inside, thick ledgers with embossed seals, handwritten signatures, receipts for donations, and consulting fees. Each line was a cut across the skin of truth. Take everything you can, I said. Theo pulled a ledger free, flipping pages. His hand shook. These aren't just donations, they're payouts. Stipends to board members, bonuses tied to Evan's fabricated data. They paid to falsify. Samira gasped, snapping faster. This is a gold mine. Then the lights died. The vault plunged into darkness, leaving only the faint glow of exit signs. A voice echoed from the doorway, smooth, mocking. Evan, you didn't really think you'd beat me here, did you? My chest froze. He stepped forward, flashlight cutting through the black. The beam swept over Theo, then Samira, before settling on me. The dean entered behind him, slow and deliberate. Ms. Core, he said, his voice calm. You've caused enough chaos. Hand over the ledgers, and maybe this ends quietly. Lena stood rigid, her silhouette unreadable. Was she their plant? My ally, or both? My hand tightened on the ledger. I forced my voice steady. If you silence me, the cascade still goes live in hours. The data's already gone. Evan laughed. Then why are you still running? You need these papers to validate your lies. I shook my head. No, I need them to validate your lies. Samira whispered, Marcy, stall. She slipped something from her bag, a pocket recorder, already blinking red. Theo, sweating, whispered too, we can't outrun them. We have to outsmart them. The dean stepped closer, his shadow stretching long. You're reckless. You don't understand how deep this goes. Then show me, I snapped. For the first time, his calm cracked. His jaw tightened. His voice rose. Do you think this school survives on tuition? On resident stipends? Without the Foundation, this place collapses. We all collapse. He gestured to the cabinets. This isn't corruption, it's survival. I raised the ledger. Then let's survive in daylight. Hands up, the FBI agent barked. Voice sharp enough to slice the sterile air. Evan's flashlight clattered to the ground. His eyes darted between the ledgers in my arms and the agent swarming the vault. The dean lifted his hands slowly, his face carved from stone. Lena raised hers too, but her lips curved in the faintest smirk, as though this was exactly what she wanted. Within minutes, we were herded into separate rooms on the upper floor. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, buzzing like angry wasps. My hands trembled as I sat across from a female agent in a gray suit. She didn't introduce herself, just clicked a recorder on. Ms. Marceline Core, you're holding materials that appear to belong to the donor foundation associated with this institution. You want to tell me why? I swallowed. Because they don't belong to the foundation. They belong to the truth. Her eyebrow flicked up. Cute. But let's not play games. We got an anonymous tip about a break-in and potential theft. If that was you, this conversation ends differently. Anonymous tip. My chest tightened. Who called them? Lena? Howard? Or was it the dean himself, covering his tracks with a sacrificial fire? The agent slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos. Me sprinting into the building, Theo right behind me, Samira with her camera. From the outside, it looked like a heist. I forced my voice steady. Those ledgers show financial manipulation tied to falsified data. Research fraud, patient risk. If you bury this, you're complicit. The agent studied me for a long moment, then she leaned back. Funny, that's exactly what someone else told us an hour ago. My stomach dropped. Who? She didn't answer. She just closed the folder. You're not our only source, Miss Core. We've been hearing whispers for months. Your stunt tonight just sped up the timeline. She stood. We'll verify the documents. If they're real, you won't be the one in handcuffs. But until then, you're not leaving this building. In another room, I imagined Theo pacing like a caged wolf, Samira biting her lip bloody, Lena sitting like marble, perfectly composed. Was she the tip? Or had someone higher, someone I hadn't even seen, decided this was the moment to strike? Hours blurred, coffee gone cold on the table, the hum of fluorescent lights drilling into my skull. Finally, the door creaked open. A different agent entered, a man with a tired face. He set the ledger down in front of me, pages marked, stamps circled. This checks out, he said. The money trail is ugly, very ugly. Relief surged through me, but it was thin, fragile. Then he leaned closer. Here's the thing, we're not sure you understand how dangerous this is. We've got reason to believe one of your allies is playing both sides. His eyes locked onto mine. Name, Lena Choudhury. What's your connection to her? My breath caught. I remembered the text from my father. Don't trust anyone, not even the doctor. I remembered her scarf, her calm voice, her inside knowledge, her smile when the feds walked in. Was she their mole, their partner, or the reason we weren't dead already? Theo and Samira were finally ushered back into the room. They looked wrung out but alive. Theo's ribs still hurt, but his eyes burned. They questioned me about Lena, he said immediately. They wanted to know if she's been pulling strings. Samira nodded. Same. They asked if she coached us, if she set you up. The agent stood, folding his arms. We're giving you one chance, Ms. Core. Confirm or deny. Is Dr. Choudhury complicit in this scheme? The room went still. My chest heaved. Words crowded my throat. Lena sat across from me, posture flawless, scarf draped like a flag of quiet defiance. The agents shifted. Anticipation thick in the room. She folded her hands. You want to know if I'm complicit? Fine, I am. My heart punched my ribs. Theo sucked in air. Samira froze mid-breath. But Lena's voice carried on. Smooth as silk. Complicit in letting this corruption go on for years. Complicit in staying silent when I should have spoken. Complicit in believing the system could fix itself. That ends tonight. The agents stiffened. One leaned forward. Are you admitting you're part of the fraud? Her eyes cut like scalpels. No. I'm admitting I protected people I shouldn't have. Out of loyalty, out of fear, out of self-interest. And in doing so, I became a cog in their machine. She glanced at me. But her finger pointed at me like a witness in court. She refused to be a cog. She cracked the gears. If you want the truth, you'll find it in those ledgers, not in my silence. The room buzzed with tension. The lead agent spoke. So why now? Why call us? Why risk everything? Lena exhaled slowly. Because I realized survival isn't the same as living. And because I knew Marceline's evidence would mean nothing if it stayed digital. It had to be authenticated, physical, undeniable. That's why I tipped you. My jaw clenched. So it was her. She had been both savior and saboteur. Theo leaned forward, fury in his eyes. And what about me? What about the men who broke my ribs? Was that just another piece of your strategy? For the first time, Lena flinched. Her voice cracked, just slightly. I didn't call that order. That was someone else's contingency. I should have stopped it. I didn't. Theo shook his head, biting back curses. Samira whispered, she's trying to rewrite the narrative in real time. The agents exchanged glances. One typed notes rapidly. Another kept their gaze locked on Lena. Finally, the lead agent said, if you want to cooperate, Dr. Choudhury, you'll sign a sworn statement. You'll testify. And if you're lying, we'll know. Lena nodded, calm as stone. I'll testify, in public. Then her eyes met mine, unblinking. But you need me. Without my testimony, they'll drown you in procedural mud. With me, they'll choke. I wanted to scream. I wanted to trust her. Both feelings clawed my chest. Because the truth was brutal. She was right. With her testimony, the case had teeth. Without it, we were just students against an empire. But what if she was still playing both sides? What if she flipped again? The agents looked at me now. Ms. Core, do you corroborate her account? Did Dr. Choudhury assist you? Every gaze in the room pinned me. Theo's, full of rage. Samira's, trembling with distrust. Lena's, calm as an ocean hiding storms. My throat went dry. The alarms shrieked, red lights pulsing against the sterile walls. Fire in sub-basement. Evacuate immediately. The agents scattered, barking into radios. The smell of smoke drifted faintly up the vents, sharp, acrid, like burning ink. Theo grabbed my arm. They're torching the ledgers. Samira's eyes went wide. If they burn, the case dies. Lena remained seated, calm even as the room shook with boots rushing past. She leaned toward me and whispered, now you see how far they'll go. Ashes are easier to bury than paper. We ran. Downstairs, through chaos. Agents shoved past us, some racing toward the vault, others ordering evacuation. The smoke thickened with each step, biting, clawing, filling my throat. The vault door stood open, heat rippling from within. Inside, Rows of cabinets glowed orange, flames licking upward as though the foundation itself had chosen to self-destruct. Theo coughed, staggering back. We'll never pull them all out. Samira clutched her camera. Then we don't, we grab enough. I charged in, heat searing my skin. My scarf caught smoke, eyes burning. I yanked open a drawer, grabbed ledgers, pages hot but intact. Samira snapped photos wildly, capturing stamps, signatures, the undeniable bones of fraud. Behind us, an explosion cracked, a cabinet collapsing in fire. Move, Theo shouted, dragging us back. We stumbled into the corridor, ledgers clutched against my chest, camera still blinking red. Agents swarmed, extinguishers hissing, radios screaming. The dean appeared through the smoke, face streaked with sweat. His voice cracked. You think you've won? Those books won't survive. This whole building will burn before I let you destroy us. He lunged. Theo intercepted, shoving him back despite his injured ribs. The dean slammed into the wall, breath leaving him in a grunt. Theo's voice thundered. You already destroyed yourself. Agents swarmed, pinning the dean. He struggled, spitting curses, eyes wild. For the first time, the man who held all authority looked small, pathetic. We emerged into the frozen night, smoke billowing behind us. Sirens wailed, Boston firefighters racing in, their hoses hissing steam against the flames. I stood in the snow, shivering, clutching ledgers blackened at the edges. Samira held up her camera, face streaked with soot, eyes blazing. We've got enough, she said, enough to make them choke. Days blurred after that. The Globe ran front-page photos. Me, soot-stained, clutching half-burned ledgers. The dean in handcuffs, smoke pouring from Beacon Hill. The narrative flipped. I wasn't just a rogue student anymore. I was the whistleblower who exposed corruption at the heart of an Ivy League medical empire. Congressional hearings opened. Donors withdrew. The hospital board resigned. And Evan, he vanished. Rumors said Europe. Rumors said paid off. Rumors said worse. But the real moment came in a packed auditorium weeks later. Cameras lined the back wall. The public wanted a face to the story. I stood at the podium, palms damp, throat dry. The weight of months pressed on me. I told them everything. The sabotage, the fraud, the intimidation, the fire, the fear of being underestimated, the terror of nearly losing my family. And then the change. How fear hardened into resolve. How betrayal cut me open but also carved me sharper. By the time I finished, the room was silent. Then applause swelled, fierce, relentless. Afterward, Theo squeezed my hand, ribs still healing. You did it, he whispered. Samira smirked, camera hanging from her neck. We did it. Lena lingered in the shadows. She had testified too, measured, careful, revealing enough to damn the foundation without damning herself. Her motives would always haunt me, but she caught my gaze across the room and mouthed one word: survive. I stepped outside, Boston winter biting at my cheeks. Snow drifted again, clean this time, untouched by fire. For the first time in months, I could breathe. I had been timid once, silent, easy to underestimate. Not anymore. Now I was something else, someone else, a voice. And voices don't burn. 2 years had passed. Boston healed in fragments. New deans, new donors, new promises. The scandal of 2003 became a headline in history books, a case study in ethics seminars. But for me, the echoes never stopped. I had finished medical school scarred but sharper, carrying a reputation I never asked for. The whistleblower. Some admired me, some hated me. Most just remembered my name with a half-whisper, as though saying it too loud might summon trouble. Theo healed, physically and otherwise, now working at a clinic that served people who couldn't afford Harvard's price tag. Samira freelanced as an investigative journalist. Her camera now her passport to places few dared tread. And Lena? She vanished after her testimony. One day she was everywhere, the next she was gone. Her scarf like a ghost in my memory. I thought it was over, until the letter arrived. It came on thick ivory paper, sealed with wax. No return address, no name. Just my own written in precise calligraphy, Dr. Marceline Core. Inside, a single sheet. A photograph. Evan, older, sharper, standing outside a glass tower. Behind him, a sign. Geneva Biotech Summit, 2005. And beneath the photo, a message scrawled in ink. The foundation never died. It evolved. If you want to see the truth, Follow the trail. My hands shook. For months, I had convinced myself Evan had disappeared, swallowed by shame or hiding somewhere in Europe. Now, here he was. Not just alive, but thriving. Samira studied the photo under her desk lamp, lips pressed tight. That's not just surviving, that's rebuilding. They gave him a new playground. Theo cursed softly. And a new empire to poison. I wanted to burn the letter, to pretend my part of the story was over. But deep down, I knew the truth. My revenge had gutted one body of the beast. But corruption doesn't die. It mutates. And Evan was proof. Weeks later, I boarded a plane. Geneva's skyline gleamed cold against the Alps, all steel and ambition. The summit buzzed with power, scientists, investors, politicians, each badge worth more than entire hospitals back home. Samira's voice echoed in my head. Document everything, Theos. Don't let him make you the prey again. I slipped through the crowd, my own badge forged, my heart pounding. And then I saw him. Evan. Perfect suit, perfect smile, laughing with men whose pens could move billions. He looked untouched by the fire that nearly destroyed him. When his eyes brushed mine across the hall, his smile froze. For a heartbeat, the mask slipped. He knew. I was back. The note lay on the hotel floor like a curse. Welcome to war. I turned it over in my hands until my fingertips smudged the ink. No return address, no clue who had slid it under my door. Evan, the Foundation, or someone else who wanted me here. Bait, not hunter. The Alps glittered outside the window, cold and perfect. But inside me, storm. I had promised myself after Boston that I was done with wars. Done with shadows, betrayals, fires. But now, seeing Evan's face, the lies rebuilt on a global stage, I knew the battle had only changed continents. At the summit the next day, the atmosphere hummed with ambition. Men in perfect suits laughed over champagne. Women in tailored blazers pitched biotech miracles. The air full of words like innovation, synergy, global health. And everywhere, money. I moved quietly, my forged badge swinging against my chest. Samira had gotten me in through a contact at a watchdog NGO, though she warned me, one wrong move and they'll chew you alive. I found Evan near the main stage. He was charming a European minister, his voice smooth, his hands animated. His eyes flicked across the crowd, confident, predatory. And then they landed on me. His smile didn't falter, but I saw it, the twitch in his jaw, the flicker of recognition. That night, Samira and I met in a cramped cafe off Rue de Rhône. She slid a folder across the table, her camera bag at her side. Inside, printouts of shell companies tied to the Foundation. Offshore accounts. Investments disguised as humanitarian grants. All roads lead here, she whispered. Geneva. They're laundering research money into biotech patents. If Evan controls this pipeline, he controls not just residencies or hospitals. He controls treatment standards across half the world. My throat tightened. He's not just playing for prestige anymore, he's playing for history. Samira's eyes narrowed. So are you. Back at my hotel, I couldn't sleep. Theo's voice haunted me across the ocean. Don't let him make you prey again. But how? How do you fight an enemy who no longer hides in dusty ledgers but in billion-dollar boardrooms, flanked by ministers and CEOs? At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. A woman's voice, low, accented. Dr. Core, if you want to bring him down, meet me tomorrow, noon, Parc des Bastions, by the Reformation Wall. Before I could ask who, the line went dead. The next day, snow dusted Geneva's old stones. The Reformation Wall loomed, carved with faces of men who had once defied empires. And there she was, Lena. Her scarf was different now, dark green, pulled tight against the cold. But her eyes were the same, sharp and unreadable. You look surprised, she said, stepping out of the shadow of Calvin's statue. My voice cracked. Surprised you're alive. Surprised you're here. Surprised you still think I'd listen. Lena tilted her head. You've grown harder. Good. You'll need it. I wanted to walk away. God, I wanted to. But she pressed a flash drive into my palm. Inside are internal memos, she whispered. Proof the Geneva Initiative is built on falsified trials. Evan's handiwork scaled up. Patients will die if this continues. I stared at the drive. Why give this to me? Because I can't touch him anymore, she said. But you can. Her eyes glinted. And because he fears you more than anyone. The snow crunched under Evan's men as they advanced, slow, deliberate. The flash drive in my palm felt heavier than any ledger, any file I'd ever held. It wasn't just paper this time. It was lives. Lena's voice was barely a whisper. Run! And I did. The Parc des Bastions blurred into streaks of stone and white. Statues loomed and vanished. My lungs burned in the frozen air, boots slipping on icy cobblestones. Behind me, shouts in French, footsteps pounding closer. Evan's voice carried, infuriatingly calm. You can't outrun me forever, Marceline. I gritted my teeth. Watch me. I darted through the university quarter, weaving between startled students and couples clutching umbrellas against the snow. My forged summit badge flapped against my coat, threatening to betray me at every turn. A hand snagged my sleeve. I yanked free just as one of Evan's men lunged. He slipped on the ice, cursing, but another was already gaining. Then a flash, a camera shutter, Samira. She'd been shadowing me, lens up, capturing everything. Go, she yelled, snapping another shot as one of the men reached for me. You've got proof in your hand. I'll make sure the world sees who's chasing you. For a heartbeat, relief cut through the fear. Samira was still with me. But the chase wasn't over. I veered into Rue de l'Université, headlights slicing the snow as cars braked, horns blaring. I dodged across, a taxi nearly clipping me. One of Evan's men wasn't so lucky. He slammed into the hood, rolling with a groan. The second man kept coming. My chest heaved, my legs screamed, and then an arm pulled me into an alley. Theo. His face was drawn, older, but those eyes were the same steel. Thought you could start a war without me. I gasped. Theo, how? He smirked. Clinic's cheap, plane tickets aren't, but some debts you don't leave unpaid. The alley reeked of damp stone and diesel. Footsteps thundered past, shouts echoing in French and English. We pressed against the wall, hidden in shadow. When it was quiet, Theo nodded at the drive in my fist. That what I think it is? Proof, I wheezed. Memos, trials, enough to drown them. His jaw tightened. Then we get it somewhere safe, somewhere loud. We made for the Rhone, cutting through narrow lanes, breath frosting in the night air. Geneva sparkled like glass around us, too clean, too polished, as though corruption couldn't possibly live here. But it did. On a bridge, we paused, the city spread below, cathedrals, cafes, the dark stretch of the lake. That's where he'll strike next, Theo said, pointing toward the summit hall. If those memos are real, every delegate in that room tomorrow is compromised. The thought made my stomach turn. The war wasn't about me and Evan anymore. It was global. Then a shadow peeled from the far side of the bridge. Evan himself. No men this time. Just him, his coat collar up, his smile thin as a razor. You never learn, he said. Every time you try to burn me, you set yourself on fire instead. Theo stepped forward, blocking me. Try her, and you'll answer to me. Evan's laugh echoed across the icy river. Still the loyal hound, but hounds die first. Theo's whisper echoed in my skull. Marcy, jump. The Rhone rushed below, black water churning with shards of ice. The headlights burned behind us, men advancing, Evan's smile cutting through the snow. I met Theo's eyes. He nodded once, and then we leapt. The shock of the water was a blade. It sliced my lungs, froze my blood, dragged me under in a grip colder than death. I kicked, arms flailing, the flash drive still clutched tight in my fist. Theo surfaced beside me, gasping, his movements ragged but relentless. This way, he shouted, voice swallowed by the roar. We let the current drag us, carried under the bridge, away from the headlights, and Evan's men leaning over the railing, their shouts muffled by the storm of water. The city blurred into lights above, distorted by the black current. My chest screamed for air, my limbs heavy as stone. For a moment, I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is how the war ends. But then Theo's hand found my arm, pulling, guiding. He dragged us toward a stone arch jutting from the embankment, a drainage outlet. With one final desperate kick, I let him haul me inside. We collapsed onto damp stone, coughing water, lungs tearing fire into our ribs. The flash drive was still in my hand. I had almost drowned with it. I laughed, wild, breathless, half hysterical. Theo leaned back against the wall, drenched, pale. We're alive, for now. We crawled deeper into the tunnel, the sound of water echoing. At last, we emerged onto a quiet back street, Geneva's lamps glowing faint against the snow. No men, no cars, just silence. Theo shivered. He won't stop. Not after this. I stared at the flash drive, water droplets glistening on its metal shell. Then neither will we. At dawn, Samira found us. She burst into the safe flat, eyes wide, camera bag still slung over her shoulder. "You're insane," she hissed, wrapping us both in towels, shoving mugs of bitter coffee into our hands. Jumping into the Rhone, "Do you want to die?" Theo grinned weakly. "Not today." Samira leaned close, lowering her voice. "But you need to hear this. I went back to the summit hall last night. Evan wasn't just angry, he was calm. Too calm. Like he already has another move." I froze. Later that morning, a news alert lit Samira's laptop. Geneva Biotech Summit unveils new global partnership. The article showed Evan shaking hands with ministers, smiling for cameras. The caption made my stomach drop. New treatments for rare diseases to be fast-tracked, thanks to clinical data supplied by Evan Stroud's team. Theo swore under his breath. Samira slammed her fist against the desk. He's not just surviving the scandal. He's turning it into power. I gripped the flash drive. Then we take this global too. If the summit is his stage, we burn it down, in front of the world. Cliffhanger. That night, as I tried to sleep, my phone buzzed. Another anonymous message glowed on the screen. "You're not ready for what comes next, but I am." No signature, just an attachment. A photo, Evan in a private meeting room, and beside him, Lena. The photo burned in my mind. Evan and Lena, side by side. Was it betrayal or another mask? I couldn't tell anymore, but one thing was clear. If I hesitated now, the world would never hear the truth. The Geneva Biotech Summit's final session was broadcast live across continents. Cameras crowded the stage, lights blazing against the polished glass walls. Evan stood at the podium, immaculate in his suit, speaking of breakthroughs, global unity, a brighter future. Every word dripped with poison dressed as progress. I stood in the wings, soaked in fear and fire. The flash drive weighed heavy in my pocket, like a stone that could break the earth. Samira whispered at my side, camera already rolling. "This is it. Once you step out, there's no going back." Theo squeezed my shoulder. "Then don't look back." When Evan paused for applause, I moved. The hall hushed as I strode onto the stage, hair still damp from the Rhone, scars of Boston in my eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, voice steady though my heart thundered. "Before you applaud another empty promise, you should see the truth." Gasps, murmurs, Evan's smile froze. I held up the flash drive. Inside this are internal memos proving falsified trials, manipulated data, and patient deaths buried for profit. This isn't innovation, it's fraud on a global scale. The screens behind me lit up. Samira had already plugged in. Images flashed, stamped documents, doctored charts, memos signed in Evan's name. The hall erupted. Ministers shouted, investors panicked, cameras whirred like machine guns. Evan lunged toward me. "You think this will save you? You've doomed yourself." Security swarmed, flashes blinding, shouts rising like thunder. And then Lena appeared. She stepped from the audience, scarf drawn tight, eyes cold as steel. She turned toward Evan, her voice sharp, clear, amplified by 1,000 microphones. "She's not lying," Lena said. "I was inside, I saw everything, and I was complicit? No more." The weight of her words cracked the air, gasps rippled through the crowd. Evan's mask shattered, rage twisting his face. For the first time, the empire he built trembled. Hours later, the summit was chaos. Police, journalists, governments scrambling. I sat outside in the snow with Theo and Samira, exhaustion heavier than any wound. Lena walked past us without a word, disappearing into the Geneva night. I didn't call her back. Some ghosts need to walk their own road. Months passed. Evan was indicted. The foundation dismantled. Patients once silenced found their voices. And me, I carried on. Not as the timid student of Boston. Not as the girl who had been betrayed. But as someone forged in fire, in ice, in war. I had learned the hardest truth. Revenge isn't just about destroying the enemy. It's about refusing to be erased. And I was still here, unburned, unbroken, unforgettable.